Okay, it is 11:33. So we're going to get started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming. I know folks are still trickling in, but we will go around and start introducing ourselves and give an overview of how this is going to run. So this is Rocking the GED, and we will go around and introduce ourselves now so you know who is going to be part of this presentation. So my name is Juliet Eisenstein. I'm a staff attorney at Advocates for Children on our post-secondary readiness team. David, I'll pass it off to you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is David Hamburger, and I'm a legal intern from NYU at Advocates for Children and a former GED teacher.
Hi, folks. My name is Ashley Grant, and I am also an attorney here at Advocates for Children, and I'm going to be one of the folks manning the chat in English.
Hi, I'm Oriana. I'm a social work manager and transition specialist at Advocates for Children. I will be managing the chat also in English and in Spanish. Soy Oriana y voy a estar ayudando a contestar las preguntas en español en el chat si tienen cualquier pregunta. Gracias.
And we also have a special guest with us. Do you want to introduce yourselves, Stacey and Aisha?
Hey everybody, I'm Stacey. Good morning everyone, I'm Denise Green, and we work with District 79.
It's great to have you both here, and we will pass it over to Stacey and Aisha later in the presentation. So before we get started, we just want to get a sense of who is with us here today. Ashley, would you mind launching the poll so we can get a little more information about who all is here?
I
got it, sorry. Okay, so you all should see a poll pop up about who you are, where you live. I'll give you a few seconds to fill that out. Okay, so it looks like most of us are professionals here. We have a bunch of educators too, a few parents, a few students as well, which is awesome. Most of us are coming from the 5 boroughs of New York City, pretty evenly distributed actually. And a couple of folks that don't live in the city. We will let you all know when we move on to city specific information later on in the webinar. But most of this presentation will cover information in both New York City and New York State as a whole. Okay, so just an overview of what today's training is going to include. So introductions, which we've just done, and then we are going to move on to basic rights in school, the different types of diplomas that you can get, and then we are going to hone in specifically on what the GED is and the high school equivalency diploma that you get after taking the GED, accommodations that you can get when taking the GED, as well as New York City specific GED preparation programs. So this workshop in general is focused on young adults who are currently in or have recently left high school and are considering taking the GED. So as I said before, for those of you who are outside of New York City, we'll let you know when we're moving on to New York City specific information. We will also, I see we've already had some questions in the chat, which is awesome. We are going to pause for questions at specific points throughout the presentation. So please use the Q&A function to ask any questions that you have, not the chat. We will cover all the questions that we see, and feel free to submit questions in either Spanish or English. And we'll indicate when we're pausing for questions in between sections. So first, we're going to start with just the basic rights in school. All students in New York City must stay in school until the end of the school year that they turn 17. This is called compulsory age. Once you reach compulsory age, you are no longer required to attend school. And also I'll note, some places outside of New York City have a lower compulsory age of 16. So some folks in other parts of New York State might have a lower compulsory age. And students have the right to stay in school until the end of the school year that they turn 21 or until they get a high school diploma, whichever comes first. Okay, so now I'm just going to talk a little bit about what push out can include. So when perhaps a school tries to have a student leave school before they have reached their diploma or before they've chosen to exit school. So even though students have the right to stay in school until they are 21 or until they get a diploma, many students experience push out before reaching one of these milestones. Push out can include taking away a student ID, turning off a student's Metro card, shortening a class schedule, telling a student to go home, not letting the student into a school building, or forcing a student to enroll in a GED program instead of completing a diploma at their current high school, when they would rather work towards their high school diploma at their home school. Students cannot be pushed out of school because they are behind in credits. In order to look for a different type of school, such as a transfer school or a Ybc program, to get a GED or a high school equivalency diploma, or for poor attendance or lateness. So these are things, to keep in mind if you're a student in school that's, having these conversations with your school or where you feel like the school is trying to push the student out. Before discharging you to a GED program or otherwise discharging you from your program at a high school, there are a few steps that a school must take. So first, they must invite your family to a school meeting or parent or guardian, fill out a planning interview form, and tell you about your right to stay in school or to re-enroll in high school. This applies to all students who are being discharged from a school program, including for attendance, and when a student is instead being referred to a high school equivalency program. In general, students who are discharged from their high school and have not changed their address have the right to return to their high school until the end of that school year, as long as there are still seats available. And in general, discharged students have the right to re-enroll in high school at any time until the end of the school year in which they turn 21, or until they earn their diploma if that comes earlier. Okay, so that was just an overview of some basic rights. I see we do have a few questions, so I'll just pause here and Ashley or Oriana, let me know if there's anything we should answer.
We have some questions about programming, Juliet, that we are going to get to at the end of this presentation. So we'll wait on those. Thank you.
Okay, great. So now we're going to go and talk about different pathways to exiting high school in New York State. So there are different high school credential options that New York students can work towards. They can work towards a diploma, which includes an advanced Regents diploma, a Regents diploma, a local diploma, or a high school equivalency diploma, or they can work towards a non-diploma credential. Note, these are not diplomas and cannot be used to apply to the military, to apply to college, or jobs that require a high school diploma. These non-diploma credentials include the Career Development and Occupational Studies, or CDOS, commencement credential, as well as the Skills and Achievement Commencement credential, otherwise known as the SAC. You'll note that there's a cross-out sign over the IEP diploma. This was formerly used as an indication for a student with a disability who was graduating without a high school diploma, but these no longer exist. If you see someone or hear someone referring to an IEP diploma, let them know that New York State no longer issues those. So we will be spending most of this presentation discussing the high school equivalency diploma and the GED. But first we're going to dive in a little bit to what graduation requirements are in general to kind of contextualize where the GED and the high school equivalency diploma fit in. Okay. So in order to get a high school diploma in New York, so using one of the 4 diploma options that I just mentioned, one of the 3 advanced regents, or local diploma options that I just mentioned, you need 44 credits and to pass what we're going to call 4+1 exams. So all students in New York City must earn 44 credits. In the rest of New York State, this is referred to as 22 credits, but that's just a matter of counting semester versus year long. And all students across New York State must pass 4+1 exams. I'm going to, in the next slide, cover exactly what those exams include. But I'll make a quick note here that if you attend a consortium school, you take performance-based assessments instead of these exam requirements, though most consortium schools will also require you to pass 1 ELA Regents exam as well. So what do these exams entail for this 4+1 requirement? So the 4+1 requirement means that you need to pass 1 ELA, 1 math, 1 history, and 1 science Regents exam in order to get your high school diploma in New York. Your +1 exam can either be a 5th Regents exam, or it could be a few different types of assessments. It could be a foreign language assessment, a CTE or career and technical education assessment, an arts assessment, or a CDAS credential, which is the credential that I mentioned a few slides prior as a non-diploma credential, can actually be added on here to help a student get a diploma. Generally, the passing score for Regents exams to meet this exam requirement is a 65, but students with disabilities as well as English language learners are eligible for lower passing scores. And there are links in this slide that go to AFC guides that go into more detail about what graduation requirements look like for students with disabilities and English language learners. We're going to circulate all of these slides after the presentation, and you'll be able to click on the links at that time to go to those guides. Okay. There have been a few changes to the exam requirement due to COVID. So due to COVID-19, Regents exams were canceled in June and August 2020, January, June, and August 2021, and January 2022. Students got COVID-19 exemptions from those Regents exams if they were planning to sit for those exams at those times. Students who got exemptions do not need to take or retake those Regents in order to meet the exam requirement to get a diploma. If you don't know whether you have an exemption, request your transcript from your school. If you have an exemption, it usually says WA next to that Regents exam, or it might say E for exempt. We're going to talk in later slides about how you can use your Regents exams and Regents exams exemptions towards your high school equivalency diploma. So just look out for that as well. Also, a quick note, these exam exemptions are permanent. So that's what I mean when I say that you don't need to take or retake those Regents. Those will stay with you for the rest of your time in high school. Okay. I'm going to pause here for questions before we move on specifically to the requirements for getting a high school equivalency diploma.
Thanks, Juliet. We still have a couple of questions about programming that we will answer at the end. Are there any other questions regarding high school, receiving your high school diploma that folks would like answered now? Okay, I'm not seeing anything, Juliet, so go ahead.
Okay, I do see one quick question about what a Ybc is. And I'll just note that that's a young adult borough center that tends to be where students can work towards their high school diplomas during the evenings if they're, doing work during the day or otherwise have other obligations. And AFC has guides to that on our website. Okay, so now I'm going to go into what the requirements are for a high school equivalency diploma. So before I was talking about a high school diploma, and while a high school equivalency diploma serves the same purpose as a high school diploma, there are a few different requirements. So the key difference is that there is not a credit requirement to get your high school equivalency diploma, or your what I'll probably refer to from here on out as your HSE diploma. So the only thing that you need to do is pass 4 tests, and I'll get into what those test requirements look like. That said, even though you don't need to get those academic requirements, credit requirements, the GED, which is the overall term for those 4 tests that you need to pass, is a difficult exam and not a quick fix for students who are struggling to complete high school. So that is something to keep in mind when deciding whether to complete high school and get a high school diploma or whether to work towards your HSE diploma instead. So a quick note here, the HSE diploma has changed a little bit over the years. So from 1942 to 2014, people had to pass the GED in order to get their high school equivalency diploma. From 2014 to 2021, the test administered that you needed to pass was called the TASC. So New York State switched the test that you needed to pass. And as of January 2022, so just a couple of months ago, New York State switched back to the GED. So now students working towards their HSC diplomas need to pass the GED in order to do so. That said, folks who have already passed sections of the TASC in prior years can still use those passing scores to count towards their GED exam requirements. And we'll get into that shortly. Okay, so the 4 exams that you need to pass to get your HSE diploma are what we'll refer to as the 4 subtests of the GED. So these are the Reasoning Through Language Arts, or RLA subtest, the Social Studies subtest, the Math subtest, and the Science subtest. We're going to get into on the next slide how you can sub out some of these tests with Regents exams or TASC subtests that you have already passed. It's strongly advised that first-time GED test takers complete all 4 subject tests in their first sitting. If one or more of the subtests are not passed, you can retake those sections after 60 days. Note, though, that subtests cannot be taken more than 3 times in a calendar year. In total, these 4 subtests make up a 7.5-hour long exam, which is obviously a long exam. It appears that for now, most GED testing takes place on a computer, though there might be paper versions available in the future for those who need that. And also just a quick note here that statistics indicate that individuals who participate in test prep programs are more likely to pass an HSE exam. And we'll get into in later slides what different types of test prep are available for folks. Okay, so this is a slide with a lot of information, but basically the main takeaway from this slide is that you need to pass 1 exam in each of the 4 subject areas on the slide that you see at the top in order to get your HSE diploma. And you might be able to use either GED TASC or Regents exams to fulfill each of those subject requirements. So if you have already passed or been exempt from, let's say, a math Regents exam, you can use that to count as passing the GED math subtest, and you will not need to sit for that section of the GED. That said, it's important to note that you must pass at least one GED subtest in order to get an HSE diploma. So even if you have passing exam scores in all 4 subject areas through either past Regents exams or TASC exams, you still need to sit for and pass at least one GED subtest in order to get your HSE diploma. One other important note is that the RLA, or what we'll call here the language arts section, in the GED is comprised of 2 different sections. There's a reading section and a writing section. And if in a previous test taking, you only passed the reading or the writing, but not both, you need to retake that portion of the GED in full in order to pass that section. A few other notes, if students have passing GED subject scores from other states prior to moving to New York State, you may be able to use those passing scores in New York State. And the GEDs has a page on their website, the New York policy page, that gives more information on this. Also in New York State, you can test in either English or Spanish, and you can combine subjects from different subject tests in different languages to earn your HSE diploma. However, the diploma will be awarded in the language that you test for, or that you test in, sorry, on the reasoning through language arts section of the GED. Okay. Okay, I'm now going to pass it off to David.
Hi, everyone. So who can take the GED? I'm going to give now a little overview of the age requirements for signing up for the GED exam. So starting with that top row, students and young people that are 19 years and older can sign up for the GED on their own, and they do not need to be part of a GED prep class and HSE program. Students who are 18 years of age can take the GED, but they must be enrolled in an HSE course. Students who are 17 years of age, you can kind of see there the 3 requirements. They need to have been out of school for 1 year. They need to be in one of these prep programs, a GED prep program or HSE program, or homeschooled. So quite a few more requirements for students that are 17 years of age. Students who are younger than 17 are under the compulsory age to take the GED exam. And so the GED is not available for students 16 and under. In terms of just who should be thinking about taking the GED, usually it's considered that you need like an 8th grade reading level to kind of be ready to start taking the GED. However, students that may have a 5th, 6th, 7th grade reading level are recommended to sign up for a pre-HSE prep program. So that really allows for folks to develop their skills to get ready to take the GED test. I think now we're going to take a quick pause again for some questions.
Thanks, David. So we have a few questions and then a comment that I just wanted to elevate in the chat. One question is there any cutoff for how long a Regents exam score can be used? And the answer to that is no. So once you've earned a passing Regents exam score, if you've passed all of your high school credits, you could at any point retake any Regents exams that have not been passed and could earn a high school diploma after even having aged out of school. Similarly, if you're going to use your if you're going to use a high school Regents exam score to combine with GED, there's also not a time limit on using those scores. We also had some questions regarding the GED regarding computer-based tests. So it is true that the GED is not an online test yet for residents of of New York. Though, as Eric points out in the chat, most testing is computer-based, and there are some sites in which you can take the test in person. And then we are still going to hold some of these questions regarding specific programs till the end when the panelists talk to us about GED programs. So thanks, David.
Great. So we're going to move on to talking about accommodations on the GED. So the GED is a challenging exam, but what everyone wants to make sure is that the challenges are math and science and reading, and that no one's disability is providing them an additional challenge for taking the test. So accommodations are changing the format of the test or the way you take the test so that everyone has a fair shot at taking this exam. And there's two types of accommodations. I'll start now by getting into accommodations that are available for everyone. So next slide. Yeah, there we go. Great. So these are accommodations that you do not need to provide documentation for. So looking at some of them, seat cushions, scrap paper, calculators, special lighting, earplugs. There's a whole list, and you can find them available online at the GED's on the GED's website. You still need to make a request for these accommodations, but you do not need to have a disability in order to be able to get these accommodations. And should you request one, you will be assured of receiving one. So these are accommodations available for everyone. The other type of accommodation are accommodations for people with disabilities. Yeah, there we go. Great. So we'll start by just kind of going through some of these. Assistive technology, breaks, special seating, having the test read to you, extra time, small group settings, text-to-speech software, scribe, private testing room. Now, this is not all the accommodations that are available for people with disabilities, just a sample of some of them. But yes, if you have the right to accommodation that is reasonable and that you need to be able to access the GED. So only 3% of requested accommodations are denied, a very small amount. Again, the GED is not trying to stop people from getting accommodations. It's trying to make sure that people get the accommodations they need. And so how do you go about getting an accommodation? We'll talk about that now on the next slide. Okay, so this is a little bit complicated, but just bear with me. It's a really important step, all right? So in order to get the accommodation that you want, you need to have the right supporting documents. And starting with that kind of top piece there, what does your document need to have? So it needs to have your diagnosis, how your diagnosis impacts your ability to take the test, and what test accommodation you need. So for example, if I was diagnosed with ADHD, I would need my document to stipulate that I have ADHD and that perhaps my ADHD makes it difficult for me to be in a room with other people while taking an exam. And then finally, the accommodation that I need, which is potentially my own room when I take the exam, right? So it's those three parts: your diagnosis, how it impacts your ability to take the test, and then what accommodation you need. So a quick aside to talking about IEPs, which many students will have. If your IEP lists the accommodation you want, that's usually enough. Be sure to send in your whole IEP, not just the page that lists your accommodation. And you can get your copy of the IEP. If you don't have one, you can get it from your last Department of Education school. Now, the second piece of this is that your document must be current, all right? And this is a pretty important part. So I'll just kind of talk about it for a second. So it depends on the disability that you have, but your document is going to have have been produced, made in either the last year for certain disabilities or the last 5 years for other disabilities. And you can find out more information on the GED website as to whether or not the document that you'll need to provide has to be made in the last year or in the last 5 years. Now, if you realize that your document is not current, meaning it's not, it doesn't meet the requirements that the GED is asking for, there's certainly some ways to get new documents. If you're enrolled in a GED class through the Department of Education, you can ask the school psychologist to do the evaluation for free. And if you're not enrolled in a GED class, there are several testing clinics in New York that provide free or low-cost evaluations. You can also, often you can pay for these evaluations through your insurance or Medicare. And in addition, this might be a case too, if you had an IEP, but there's a new accommodation you're seeking, you would need to then provide additional documentation for it. Certainly, if you're still a student in a public school, you can request to have your IEP updated with additional information. Now, as I said, like this, can sound a little bit complicated. We'll get to it at the end, but certainly if you have additional questions, you can reach out to the GED folks themselves and also to our team at Advocates for Children to help you kind of walk through what documents you have and don't have and what you need in order to be able to get the accommodations. So now I'll talk about a little bit more the process, kind of high level as to how you request an accommodation. So the first step is going to be you're going to make a GED account online yourself. Then you're going to have to create a second account to create a GED accommodations account. And that's going to be where you're going to input all of your information and your request for an accommodation. So once you've created a GED accommodations account by providing a little extra information, you'll be ready to submit your accommodations request. When you're submitting an accommodations request, that's where you're going to list your disability, you're going to list what accommodation you're looking for, and you're going to be able to upload your supporting documents. In addition, this might be helpful for some people, there's an option to add a contact. So that would be like a third party, a teacher, someone in HSE program who will kind of be added onto your case, and then we'll be able to receive information from the GED folks. So kind of just like an assistant to help you make your way through the accommodations request process. Then you'll wait for your determination. This is supposed to take 30 days, 30 business days, and you'll hear back from the folks at the GED team, the GED accommodations team. And the numbers that they gave us in a recent call we had with them was that 85% of accommodations are accepted right away. And then there's like 12% or so where they ask for more information. Maybe there's some small issue with documents. But again, really, the GED folks are trying to work with you to get the accommodations. People are not there to stop you from getting an accommodation. And as I mentioned before, really good idea to get in touch with them if you have any questions. Their email is there at accommodations@ged.com. And I found that their email response time was quite good in the times that I've written them. So there to help you along the way. Okay, I think we're going to take some more questions.
Thanks, David. So one question was about resources that are available for anyone who is homeschooled and studying on their own for the GED. We're going to put in the chat District 79, which is New York City's alternative school district, has some GED resources that are available to anyone. So we're going to put those in the chat, and we'll also circulate that with the PowerPoint slides. There are curriculum and materials on that site that folks are welcome to use. And then there was also another really good comment in the chat that that the GED is a very long exam, and so you certainly can take all of the subtests in one sitting, though that's not the best idea for everyone, and you certainly don't have to. So the GED itself and your programs may encourage you to take just one or a couple of the subtests that you're well prepared for. So just want to clarify that for anybody who is curious. And we have a number of questions regarding age eligibility for the exam. So Juliet, could you pop us back quickly to slide 17? So this slide is going to go out in the packet that folks will receive. So anybody who's over 19, who's 19 and older, can sign up for the GED themselves. You do not need to be in an approved HSE course. As Juliet said at the onset, in New York City, compulsory age is the July after your 17th birthday. Outside of New York City and New York State, there are other places where it is only compulsory to be in high school until the July after your 16th birthday. And so this middle band here that says 17 with an asterisk or 18, this refers to students who are over compulsory age. So in New York City, that means the July after your 17th birthday has passed. In other districts in the state, that it may be after your 16th birthday. You need to look into the compulsory school rules in your district. So anyone over compulsory age in their district and under 19 can take the GED if they've been out of school for 1 or more years, if they are enrolled in an approved high school equivalency program, and we're going to talk about some of those later, or if they are homeschooled. Students who are under the compulsory age may not sign up for the GED test and need to wait until they are above compulsory age. That's it for right now. So go ahead, guys.
And I just want to quickly add on to what Ashley mentioned. Of course, to deal with kind of the length of the GED exam, there are accommodations you can receive for breaks or extra time, which I've seen is quite successful for certain students who are then able to kind of spread the exam out over a longer period of time, over a full day. But certainly, yes, again, you don't have to take all 4 sections at the same time.
And I just want to, before we move on, I noticed a question in the chat about how old Regents exams can be. And it looks like from our folks at D79 who are panelists, can use a Regents exam score from the 90s or for as long as the Regents exams have existed, if you have proof that you have passed them. Okay, so we are now going to move on to New York City specific information. So for folks who are outside of the city or who don't work with folks who are outside of the city, you're welcome to sign off. What we do ask is that you just complete the survey for us to let us know how we're doing and how this training was for you before you hop off. And we will drop a link to that survey in the chat. Okay. Thank you all. And I will pass it back over to David to talk more about HSE in New York City.
Great, thank you, Juliet. So in New York, we're very lucky. There are so many wonderful free HSE programs to get people ready to take the GED exam. There's a number here, Pathway to Graduation or P2G, which we'll talk about a little bit more. Day and evening programs, full-time and part-time programs, credentialed teachers, CBO partners. So CBO partners, many of these free HSE programs are located in school buildings, community-based organizations, CBOs, like the Door, the Red Hook Community Justice Center and settlement houses, the Hetrick Martin Institute. Really, there's so many programs to fit whatever other commitments you have in your day-to-day life. And really like there should be a program out there that fits your specific needs. And we're happy to help folks try to figure out what's the program that is best for them. I'll talk a little bit more now about some of those P2G programs in New York. So you must be 17 to 21. Generally, you must be 18 or older to participate in HSE programs, as I said before, with at least an 8th grade reading level. If you're 18 or under, you must be enrolled in a course to take the GED. In some cases, which Ashley had just mentioned, 17-year-olds can enroll with a parent or guardian permission. 17-year-olds need parental approval, administrator approval, can work in certain circumstances. And again, these programs vary a lot, but some sites will accept youth up to the age of 24. Young people who are 21 to 24 can also consider adult education programs, which I'll get to on the next slide. There is, just to kind of highlight this, there's some Iep support in some of these P2G programs. Students with disabilities have a right to get an Iep service until they graduate or until the June after they turn 21. And right now the DOE tells us that all P2Gs offer sets and counseling. If you have OT, PT, or speech on your IEP, you can request a voucher called an RSA to get the DOE to provide these services outside of school, meaning to get them to provide them in a P2G program. Similarly, if your IEP recommends an ICT or 15-to-1, and you need a class taught full-time by a special education teacher, these programs may not be supportive enough for you, but you can call us at AFC to talk about your options if anyone tells you IEP supports aren't available in the P2G program that you've applied for. Again, just to highlight this one more time, usually, and you should look this up and ask the folks at the P2G program you're interested in, but usually it's a 7th grade reading level. If you have a 5th or 6th grade reading level, there are certainly other programs for you, but these are probably going to be pre-HSE programs. So important to kind of keep that in mind when you're studying which program is going to be the best fit for you. So let's talk a little bit about getting into a DOE HSE program. Great. So the steps are kind of laid out there for you. So you're going to visit a referral center with a parent if you're under 18. While there, you're going to take the TAB test. This process often takes more than one day because you have the TAB, I always forget. I think it's the TAB. And orientations are often offered on different days. So you're going to take the test one day and then your orientation would be the next day. Orientation may happen before you take a TAB, depends. It could be first orientation, then test orientation. So you just need to call ahead and make sure that you are aware of the process at your referral center. And then you will end up meeting with the counselor to choose the HSE program that's right for you based on your location, time, needs, etc. There's also non-DOE HSE programs, and there's a list of those that can be found online. Yeah. Okay, and now I think I'm going to turn it over to Juliet.
Yeah, thank you, David. So I'm now going to pass it off to Stacy and Naisha at District 79 to tell us more about adult GED programs that the DOE offers. And Stacy, if you also want to talk about reading levels for the GED, you can feel free.
Sure. Thanks so much. And thank you so much for having us. This is such a wonderful convening, and this information is so clear and helpful. And we love it. We love the way everything's been laid out here. We're just very appreciative. So once again, my name is Stacy Oliger and I work with District 79, and we are actually live from Brooklyn Adult Learning Center in Brooklyn, one of our different locations for adult education. Every day in this building, over 200 students come here to really expand their opportunities. And opportunities that are built here. They point out that while we are discussing, we actually offer that QR code to start to enroll today if anybody on this call has somebody that they'd like to share it with. And we're also going to put a link in the chat as well for enrollment. I'm going to pass it over to Naisha, but I just wanted to double check. Can you hear us a little better now? Yeah. Okay, great. Because we're using the phone, we had to do a different workup. So apologies for that. Naisha?
Yes, good day, everyone. And thank you again for having us. I'm Naisha Green. I am the re-engagement coordinator for adult education.
Naisha, you're muted. So sorry. Naisha, can you hear me? Stacy and Naisha? You all are muted. We heard Naisha introduce herself, but then it got muted on the phone, I think.
Sorry. Yes, so sorry about that. Thank you. So again, I'm stating that we're at Brooklyn Adult Learning Center, as Stacy shared, and the opportunities that anyone can receive within adult education is the high school equivalency diploma, English as a second language, as well as career and technical education classes. There are over 150 sites throughout the 5 boroughs, and enrollment is really easy. We have created enrollment hubs So those who are familiar with referral centers for P2G, it's the same concept for adult education. It's literally, you can walk in and receive information as well as enroll at one of our enrollment hub locations. The goal with adult education is really to support students, adults, with obtaining whatever career path they see best for themselves.
Naisha, at least on our end. Yeah, sorry.
I'm sorry. Were you able to hear the times and dates that you can enroll? Day classes, evening classes, as well as weekend classes. So there's many opportunities to make a connection and achieve, whether it's your high school equivalency diploma, whether it's taking English classes and or Korean. And that's basically the summary around adult education services for students who do have an IEP. For adult education, you have to self-disclose. And while there are not any built-in structures directly in adult education besides extended time for testing, our case managers support students with one-on-one support services. So we can always.
I think you're muted again, Naisha.
Thanks. Everybody hear me? Sorry, it keeps turning off onto mute.
Yes, we can hear you now. We heard one-on-one supports.
Okay, awesome. It's cutting out.
I think you're still muted
I'm
now.
sorry, we can't hear you guys now.
Oh no.
Okay, we unmuted. Can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you now.
So I'm muted.
All right, I really apologize. Well, so I think the gist of it is that we, for adult education, we have extensive supports in place across the city. We have case managers who work with students. And basically, at the end of the day, we want everybody to know if any one of our students needs anything, it is our job to help supply it to them. And if not, to help find the resources available with our partners to provide them. So we really want to encourage everybody who's on this call to think about somebody that could use the services of adult education. And with that being said, I just also wanted to clarify something about pathways to graduation and all of our high school equivalency preparation programs. There's not a requirement of a reading level. We do tape test everybody or do an assessment upon entry, but it is really just to have a literacy level who have a 0.0. Okay, we take anybody and we actually have all different types of classes, including literacy, pre-GED, all different levels available for all students.
Thank you so much for clarifying that, Stacy. And we just wanted to ask, we get a lot of questions about co-op tech and how it's available for adult learners. I know that probably fits into the career and technical ed classes, but could you all just speak for a few seconds on that? You're muted.
Yes, absolutely. So our co-op tech adult, I'm not though. It says I'm not.
Sorry, you were just delayed.
Better? Okay. Okay, great. So tech program for adult education operating Monday through Thursday in the Tech campus on East and First Avenue. Different
Stacy, we can't hear you. I'm sorry. Your sound is cutting out.
Is it better now? Okay. So what I can do is I can type into the chat exactly what's offered. How about that?
That'd be great. Thank you. Sorry about the tech troubles.
No, it's okay.
Okay, so Stacy will give some more information about Co-op Tech in the chat, and I will turn it back over to David.
All right, I'm back and I have more GED prep options for you all. As I said, so many wonderful programs here in New York. Some of them come through the Department of Youth and Community Development, DYCD. And these programs, kind of by and large, they provide GED prep for folks ages 16 to 24, while also kind of providing job training at the same time. So Advance and Learn, the folks that join that program will get, depending on your interest, culinary arts, digital marketing, certified nurse's aide, commercial driving license, masonry and landscaping, training support, in addition to getting you ready to take your GED exam. Again, you can go to these the Department of Youth and Community Development's Train and Earn or Advance and Earn websites to find out more about what those programs look like. And then there are other programs offered by New York State. You can search by borough, and there are plenty of free options. And I just want to stress that one more time, that there's so many free, wonderful options in New York that no one should need to pay for an HSE program. I know there are some out there, but there really are some wonderful free options for you. And certainly last but not least, another option is the CUNY GED programs. So the CUNY GED programs are wonderful. There are 14 locations across the 5 boroughs. You can kind of see on the map there, those little blue circles with the white books are the locations in New York City. As I said, 14 and tens of thousands of New York City adults and out of school youth have learned to speak English, to read, to write, to do math, and to prepare for their HSE exam. So right now classes are currently offered online due to the pandemic, but I think that they're really starting to try to come back in person. And so they, again, they run kind of a full range of classes at the City University locations, from ESL classes to pre-HSE classes to HSE classes. And then once you've rocked the GED and you've obtained your GED, I would say go back and look at CUNY for a few other incredible programs they offer. CUNY Start, which is a pre-college program for students seeking their AB. And this program is for folks that have their high school diploma or have earned it through taking and passing the GED exam. There's also CUNY ASAP, which is a program for associate bachelor seekers that provides additional support and funding. These programs are relatively new and they're wonderful. I've had many students who I worked with pass their GED go on to being part of either CUNY Start and CUNY ASAP, and I've just heard rave reviews. So certainly once you rock the GED, keep it going, keep investing in yourself, and go on for that AB and beyond. And I think now we're going to do our last round of questions.
Thank you, David. So there are some questions about preparation programs online. So as a reminder, if you are 17 or 18 and you wish to take the GED, you need to be enrolled in an approved high school equivalency program. So that could be a program through the Department of Education, through CUNY, or another approved program. Currently, all of the Department of Education's P2G programs are in person, and I understand there are some hybrid programs for adults. And it's quite important to make sure that you are in an approved program. And so that's part of the reason we encourage folks not to do a paid program, is because you need to be in an approved one to take these programs. And then I also just want to note that in the Q&A, you're going to see contact information for Eric Appleton, who works for CUNY Adult Literacy Program, and he can answer questions that you have about CUNY adult programs, so eligibility or any questions about their program. So thank you so much for offering that, Eric. We'll also circulate your contact information with the materials that go out. And then there's a question about read aloud exams, read aloud as an accommodation on GED assessments. Abigail says that for all the IEPs she's seen, Read aloud is often excluded for reading comprehension and ELA exams, though it's allowed for other exams. Abigail, in Department of Education IEPs, it is very uncommon to see read aloud in a reading assessment, though if it's a reading comprehension exam and the student needs read alouds for comprehension, I have seen IEPs that allow read aloud in IEPs. I don't know the answer to whether the GED approves read aloud for the reading and writing section of the GED. If anyone who's here knows that and can throw that into the question, that would be really helpful to know. Stacy, do you happen to know whether, so we'll email information about that if we can get anything about accommodations. And the question is also, are the approved ones the ones that cost money and the approved ones are free? The programs that we're telling you about are all approved high school equivalency programs, and they are all free. We strongly encourage folks not to pay for a GED program because there are many free GED programs in the city. There are also free GED programs through public libraries. And so in addition to the ones we've shared, we really discourage folks from ever paying for a GED program. And we will absolutely circulate all of the, absolutely circulate, there's a question about chats and notes. We'll circulate all of these slides and all the contact information that was shared in the chat. And then Eric from CUNY is sharing that he recently heard from a case manager that a student of hers was approved for a reader in a recent GED exam. That reader was present and read the text aloud during the exam. So text read aloud is a great example of an accommodation that is available on the GED if your documentation shows that it is appropriate for you. And we will circulate these slides with more details on those things.
Thank you, Ashley. Is that all, or should we?
Those are all of the questions that I am seeing now. So I think you can go ahead and move on to resources, and I'll keep an eye out for anything else to answer in the Q&A.
Okay, great. So now we just have a slide with a few free resources that cover some of the information we've already shared, as well as additional resources. So New York State Education Department High School Equivalency Announcements provides recent updates. The GED's New York policy page answers frequently asked questions about testing policies. The CUNY FAQ about the GED transition is updated really frequently and includes information from the New York State Ed Department that's not even on the New York State Ed's own site yet. And then finally, AFC has just released a Rocking the GED publication that's on our website that provides a lot of the information that we've covered in today's presentation in a shorter guide form. And as we said before, we'll also be circulating all of the slides that we've covered today to everyone in attendance here. Okay, so we now have reached the end of our presentation. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for asking such great questions. We will circulate both the slides and a recording of the webinar once they are available this week. And we now would just ask that everyone complete a short survey letting us know how we've done. That survey has just been dropped in the chat. If people cannot access the chat, we will circulate the survey when we send out these presentation materials as well. And thank you again to Stacy and Naisha for joining us from District 79. We really appreciate all of your insights. And finally, if you have any other questions, we know that this process is complicated. We've given you a lot of information today. AFC has a helpline open Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. You can call us at the number on this slide. You can also email us at info@advocatesforchildren.org. We also have a ton of guides and resources on our website under the Get Help link, where you can go to find out more information. And then finally, if you would like to sign up to get monthly updates in your inbox from AFC about future workshops, about changes in the law, circulating new Know Your Rights materials, feel free to sign up. we will drop a link in the chat so you can do so. And we will also circulate that link when we circulate the materials. I'll pause here to see if there are any last minute questions that folks have.
Juliet, we got some questions about language access, and it is true that the GED is currently available in English and Spanish, so folks need to be proficient in one of those languages to take the GED. Folks in the chat are pointing out that that CUNY does offer a program called CLIP, a language immersion program, which does provide language supports, and DOE's adult education program also provides literacy supports for folks who are learning English and to take that exam in English later. So I would direct you to those resources, both CUNY CLIP and the DOE Adult Learning Program, if you're looking for resources for folks who are learning English. And then Caitlin asked a question in the chat about how can individuals access computers or other forms of technology that they need to prepare for the GED. And so again, I would direct folks to one of these free GED programs where supports are provided in person, or there are some hybrid programs through District 79. And Stacy, are you aware of any supports to provide adults with technology if they are participating in one of the hybrid programs?
Yes, actually, over the summer, can you hear me?
Yes.
Over the summer, we actually got a donation from the Fund for Public Schools, adult learners who did not have technology because during COVID, they actually were not eligible to receive devices, but we do have them on hand for the students who are working with the hybrid program.
Awesome. Stacy was cutting out a little bit, but the DOE does have technology available to adults that are participating in those programs who need it. So thank you so much, Stacy and Aisha, for being here. And thank you so much to the folks in CUNY who have been weighing in the chat. We really appreciate it. That is the end of the questions, and we will circulate all of this contact information with the slides following the presentation. Thank you all so much. Juliet, I think you can end the feed.